everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teeth Matter. I'm your host, Ellie Halabian, DDS, and in this episode, we're chatting with the amazing Dr. Connie Wang. Dr. Connie Wang, if you don't know her already, she is big on social media, but not just that, she's a Pharm D who completed her studies and then went on to do dentistry on top of that. And now she's only 28. So talk about brains. So we talk about what she identifies with most, being a pharmacist or a dentist. Now that she's in dentistry, is she surprised by the day-to-day? What are her expectations? Where does she see herself in dentistry? And the journey being a new grad. So let's dive in. Dr. Connie Wang, welcome to Teeth Matter. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk with you because you are an incredible and fun person to talk to. But I really want to know, like, you were a pharmacist and then you went into dentistry. So my big question to you is, what do you identify with more, pharmacy or dentistry?
Definitely like 1000% dentistry. I don't think I ever identified with pharmacy, and that was probably the problem. I should have known that earlier on.
So tell us a little bit about your journey then. So you were a pharmacist and then you went into dentistry. When did you graduate pharmacy school and when did you start dental school?
Yeah, so it was kind of like I went straight from pharmacy to dental. So some backstory on how I ended up there. That wasn't always the plan. I wasn't like I wanted to like do this all. But when I was in high school choosing a college, I'll be honest, just the most affordable option for me was to do the 6-year pharmacy program like in my hometown. I had free tuition to go to that program. So it was kind of like never like a thought that I would do anything else other than free tuition for pharmacy school. You're going to be a pharmacist. And I mean, in hindsight, it makes sense because, it's the most affordable, school is expensive. And when I was 18, I'll be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just thought, like, I want something healthcare. So that kind of made sense, right? Everything on paper that worked. What happened, though, was, I started the program. It's 6 years. It's 2 years of undergrad and then 4 of pharmacy. I just like loved the environment. I was like, I love my friends in pharmacy. I always thought like if you don't like pharmacy, you can switch out in the first 2 years of college, transfer to pre-med, pre-dental, whatever. But I didn't want to transfer out because like college is fun and I loved college and I mistook that for I like being a pharmacist. So when the time came and my parents were like, oh, do you want to switch to something else? I was like, no, I'm having fun being a pre-pharmacy student here at URI. So long story short, I ended up going through, but right away I knew it wasn't right. I think it was after my first year of pharmacy school, I was like, this, like, talking about the conditions of the body was interesting, but the second we got to the drugs, how the drugs worked, the nitty gritty of like the dosing of the drugs and stuff, I was like, oh, someone else can deal with that. I don't really want to deal with that detail. And then one day I remember I was just studying for some tests and I was like, I'm studying to become the person that has to deal with that. And that's when I was like, maybe I should think of something else.
That's so funny. I love how your parents actually asked you if you wanted to switch because like my parents would never even give me the consideration of like, oh, would you like to change up your career?
Well, but I have to add the clarification. It was, would you like to switch to become a doctor? So it wasn't it was like, do you want to advance even more? And I was like, no, this is enough for me. Yeah.
So did you end up finishing the pharmacy degree or did you
Yes.
like realize okay, so you finished, you dedicated the 6 years, you get to the end and then you're like, this is really not for me.
Kind of. So what happened was that summer of the first year, it's funny. I always tell people it was the best rejection ever. We talked about my podcast a little bit about rejection. What happened was I wasn't rehired to do like my favorite job. It was a job I really identified with, being an orientation leader over the summer. So I had for the first time in my like young adult life, a lot of time to think about who I was, where I was going, all the things you don't think about when you're like 20, right? And so for the first time I was like, am I actually happy like going this route? Because this kind of really sucks. And that's when that summer started to do a lot of arts and crafts. And I was like, man, I wish I could make people feel better with arts and crafts. And one day, very serendipitously, I thought of my brother-in-law who's a dentist and he makes great paintings. And I was like, he seems like he's happy to be a dentist, which is kind of funny because in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, being a dentist is like so hard. It's so not, but it was a very naive thought, but it led me to that path. And so people say falling in love is slow but all at once. That's kind of what my path was like, because it was slow and then I was like, oh my god, am I doing this? And then, what became questioning it became, one day I was like, let me just see what it takes to get into dental school. And then it became, let me just see what prereqs I'm missing. Let me just see, if I were to start today, what it would look like. And one thing led to the other, and I ended up applying, and it worked out where at my 4th year of pharmacy school, the 4th year is usually a rotation year. It's kind of like rotations for us in dental school. So it was basically like a gap year for me. So I spent that year, I applied the summer before, so I spent that year, my rotation year, interviewing for dental school. So that way, when I graduated May of 2019, I was able to start at Tufts Dental School July of 2019. So I had like 2 months in between, but I never practiced as a pharmacist.
Oh, interesting. Do you think when you applied to dental school, having like a Pharm D, that there was a lot of questions about like your commitment, or like
yeah,
this is really what you want?
It's so interesting, because that's exactly my guidance counselor. I remember he was like kind of trying to discourage me from doing it, because he's like, they're gonna think you're just flopping around all these professions. And the thing that really I realized along the way, though, is it actually helped me, because working in another field of healthcare helped me confirm that it was not right for me. A lot of people apply to dental school never having thought of anything else. And so when they go into it, they might end up disappointed that it's not what they thought it was, or they might realize they didn't know themselves well. The wonderful thing that going to pharmacy gave me was it taught me a lot about myself, and it taught me a lot about what I didn't want from a career. So because of that, I kind of got a head start in dental, because I knew exactly what I want, what I don't want. I had so much more reference.
I love that. I agree with you. A lot of kids who go from undergrad straight into dental school, they really haven't like lived life or experienced a lot of things to really know what it is that they want out of a career or out of life itself. So
what did you do before dental school? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I didn't get into dental school on my first try. It actually took me a couple tries to get in. So, and I've shared this story before, but because I didn't get in the first time, I ended up doing a master's in management and IT, and I was working for an oral health company, but on the corporate side. So I was doing PR and marketing, and then I did that even after I finished my degree. Couple years after, I was like, you know what, I actually want to be on the clinician side. I'm going to try again. So it took a lot of courage to go back to school and want to study again and do the DAT and all of that stuff. And I gave myself a little bit of time in between before I sat down and like put my head in the books. But when I did, I applied, and then it eventually happened. So it was about like a 5-year gap between undergrad and dental school for me.
Got it. Okay, but isn't that so cool though? Like, don't you see it as such a valuable stepping stone before your journey?
Completely. Like I talk about this with everyone. It's about like life is all about layering. Like every experience layers on top of the next, and you learn more about what you don't want than what you do want or what you do like. And I think that's even more valuable, because you can kind of like filter things as you go forward. And so yeah, like I feel like much more fulfilled now than I was when I actually was wanting to go to dental school, right? So very happy with the way things turned out. But like for someone like you who like had that change, now you're in dental school, you have this idea of what dentistry is going to be, because now you're excited about something new and something that involves your passion for arts and crafts. When you get out, and now that you're finally out, congratulations, recent grad.
Thank you.
Is dentistry what you pictured it to be, or is it a little bit different than what you expected?
It's interesting, because some of the highs are what I expected, like fixing someone's like anterior that they chipped and getting them to fix their smile. That's the stuff that I literally wrote my like dental school application stuff about. So to be able to live out that dream, I'm like, this is all that I wanted and more. It actually surprises me sometimes. Like, it's even better than I expected in some ways. But on the flip side, the things that I didn't expect are so much more different. I don't think I quite realized how hard it is showing up every day just to work and be an adult. That, let me give credit to all the adults out there. That is enough. That is enough of a surprise and a shock to our nervous system. So for all of the adults waking up every day going to work, I commend you. But two, on a more serious note, honestly, I feel like we go to school for 4 years learning how to essentially not hurt someone doing dentistry. That's it. That's what you go to school for, to kind of learn. And even then, you just learn how to do the thing. I always say going to dental school is like learning how to pedal. and ride a bike, but once you graduate, what I'm going through now is, okay, how do you ride that bike uphill? How about downhill? How about in the rain, in the snow? Did you even ever know how to ride a bike? Let's relearn how to ride a bike. And that's what the real world is. It's surprising how much the real world has to teach you and how much being a dentist is not about the dentistry.
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest shock of it all was adulting is hard. Like
So
being an
hard.
adult and having these responsibilities, and now having these financial responsibilities like paying your student loans, or I don't know, making enough production so that your salary is something that you can live off of and not be like paycheck to
Oh
paycheck.
my
These
gosh,
are all
yeah.
struggles. Like productivity is a struggle.
Or
Um,
even like feeling like I know what I'm talking about. Like I do, I have the degree, I have the experience, but when you're kind of in a room, let's say, we all have our own insecurities and imposter syndrome.
right.
Let's say I'm in a room with like a mom and the mom is so sure about something. Then I'm still like, "Oh my god, is she right?" Like there's
Yeah.
like there's so much that goes into the amount of decisions we make every day and our confidence levels. And so I think that's a rude awakening too, is that even the things it makes you question what's right or wrong sometimes. Not to go on a tangent, but like I
Right.
feel like in school there's options A through C, and in the real world you're like, okay, this answer technically is right on paper, but is this what's
Right.
right for the person?
Totally. School is all multiple choice, and so you can there's some safety in that. But when it
Hmm.
comes to the real world, and you're right, like imposter syndrome. Like if there's somebody in the chair who's asking you a question, as a someone who is like a new dentist and like learning what they are capable of and how like what their skill set is, how do you know when it's out of your scope? Like when do you say no? And that's
Hmm.
also a very difficult question for a lot of dentists. It's like I want to try it. I want to do this. I want to take this case on, but like, do I actually know how to do it? Or do I have the skill set to do it? Or do I feel like it's justified to charge them for a procedure that I don't have much experience doing? So I think
Totally.
yeah, I think that complicates things a little bit too. And it adds a value of emotional stress that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
And like I'm also reading the person. I'm like, do I think we're going to be a good team, or is it going to be a
Mm.
conflict the whole time? Because even if I could do the thing, I'm not going to be the doc for everyone, and that's totally fine. But it's kind of my judgment to be like, I think you're better off seeing someone else for something.
So when you do have a patient who's in the chair and you're like, oh, this vibe is not working. Like I know this is going to
Hmm.
be a complicated patient. How do
Hmm.
you have that conversation where you're like, oh, I don't think I'm the one for you?
Yeah. So I'm pretty transparent with my patient. A lot, like I feel like a lot of people have a different approach to it. I really try to show up the same as how I am in person now with my patients, whether that's naive or not. But I just sit down and I'm like, okay, listen, like we need to have this talk. Like, do you think I'm the right person for you? Because this is what I recommend doing. But if our vision isn't going to be the same, and if you don't feel that you're comfortable with going ahead with my recommendations, then I would much rather that you find someone that you are comfortable with their recommendations. Or let's say this hasn't happened to me yet, but like if someone's like, I feel like you need more experience, I'm sure it's
Mm-hmm.
coming. I look young, I talk young. If someone said that, then by all means, because I'm imagining myself as them. I mean, and this is a pretty like civil conversation. There's a lot more like less civil things that could happen. But let's say that is the problem. Let's say they're like, you know what, I want someone that's more experienced.
Yeah.
If the roles were flipped, I would totally want a provider that understands that. I think
Mm-hmm.
of like I recently went to my gynecologist, and like that was like a recent time where I had to be in the patient chair,
Right.
and it just made me see things from the patient perspective. Like if they want someone else, then and I'm not the one for them, then it's at least my job to let them know that and not keep making life harder for the both of us.
Right. No, I get questions like that all the time about my age. Like, oh, how old are you? You look so
Mm-hmm.
young. And it's like, how do you navigate these conversations and have the patient still have faith in your work,
Yes.
right? Or in your capabilities?
I will say though, humor goes a long way, because like humor means a lot more than just humor. Humor is kind of like a big focus on my podcast and my page, because to me, the ultimate sign of like intelligence and also confidence is humor. So, for
Completely
example, if
agree.
anyone gets this, like the how old are you actually, like, oh, aren't you young? I have a couple jokes in mind. The first one being, it's the skincare routine. I'll fill you in later. I try to play it off as something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, another kind of twist. I think I heard this from someone on Instagram. I forget where. There's a wealth of information if you ask, some dentists. Like Joyce the dentist has really good ones. because she has talked about how she looks
Oh,
young.
she's great. Yeah.
Yeah, someone said, yeah, I am this young, but that means I've spent my whole life training to be your dentist. And like, isn't that something special that you spent your whole life
Interesting.
training? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great spin on it. I actually
Mhm.
joke about because I have like white hairs, so I'm like, oh, you didn't see my white hairs.
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, and they laugh at that, and then it just like eases everything over. But I completely agree with you. When humor is a sign of confidence, and
Hmm.
it definitely also helps build a relationship with you and the patient. So it goes a long way. When have you had a bad reaction to when you were transparent to a patient? Like if you were candid about like this is not going to work, has anyone had any kind of like backlash?
Um, Not so much backlash, but I will say I feel like from early on, one of my morals has been to really stay true to who I am and to be like that authentic kind of like I'm gonna show up how I am because I believe in like not like I'm obviously gonna serve my community, but I want to be upfront and not be something that I'm not, right? Because patients can
Mhm.
sense that, and it's dangerous when patients sense like fear or like insecurity about that. I will say I've probably had patients that have been like, you seem a bit young, like just questioning that kind of side of it. And that's when I
Right,
go into the whole skincare. I like joke
right,
about all
right.
that stuff. But no, luckily so far in my sorry, can you hear that? I think that's my dog. Wait, is Jimmy? Is that you? Oh, that's Ellie. Sorry. That was my dog. She was like pounding on the door, and I was like, okay, either the house is on fire and I need to get out of this room, or it's my
No, it's
dog.
okay. It's okay. If you have to
Um,
go, don't worry. I get it. It's okay.
no. It was not that at all. No, my dog just like likes because
Oh,
I lock the door when I record,
yeah,
so
yeah.
she likes to barge in.
Oh,
But where was I going? You know, I must say something though. It is only my first 6 months, and for people like listening in school, you're like, oh, 6 months, like you must kind of
yeah.
have it figured out. 6 months is so new. I've only just dipped
Oh,
my
yeah.
toe in. So watch tomorrow at work, someone's gonna be like, I don't like the way that you're talking to me about this, and then I'm gonna be like, oh, I could have mentioned this on the podcast.
Yeah. Listen, like 6 months is very fresh. You're like really new
Mm-hmm.
to the game. There's a lot of new things, new environment, new job, new
Totally.
like everything is a first, right? On a patient who is paying big bucks to be in that chair. So like you have this whole new sense of responsibility.
That's the biggest imposter syndrome thing. Like, I feel like when I first started working, I would see like how much my like filling costs. I'm like, they're paying that for this. It's
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
wild.
It's really wild, and it adds a lot of stress. So
Yeah.
how have you been dealing with these changes? Like if you see that it's putting pressure on you, like, oh, my patient is paying this much for a skill that I am not like perfect at. Like I'm going to do
Hmm.
my best, but I'm not great at it. How do you navigate those emotions?
So I think the biggest thing was early on in my job hunt, I was very, very selective about the kind of people that I wanted to work with. I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure it was people on the same page of being a collaborative environment. Luckily, I found my boss, and like I honestly credit all of how I'm handling everything to my boss and my teams because they're really, really supportive. Like, we have like a doctor's office kind of hub where
Yeah,
we're always, it's not just me, like we're always pulling up radiographs, talking about our cases. Like if you walk in, it's just a very collaborative group thing. So
I
that's
love
helped me
that.
a lot. Yeah,
That's
that's very
amazing.
unique. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize it really until hearing more and more about other people's new grad experiences.
Hmm.
Another thing is I'm just so I have a mentor that's my boss. He kind of like owns all the practices. And so what we started in the beginning, we don't do it anymore because it was like a lot. But in the beginning, he was really nice. I credit this all to him. He would look ahead at my weekly schedule and every Sunday he would send his Sunday email. It's almost like his podcast or his newsletter. And he'd be like, "Oh, I see you have like a posting court coming up. These are some pearls I've learned about this." Or one Sunday it would be like, like this is a tip on how I approach new patient exams where they don't think they need a lot of work, but turns out they did. Like his
Mm.
Sunday emails were kind of my Bible for the first couple of months.
Yeah.
And you don't have to ask your boss to give you those Sunday emails by all means. Like, I don't know how he has the time for it, but it's kind of like what we talked about on my podcast. You have to know the right questions to ask. So don't be afraid
Totally.
to ask for help.
That's amazing. Like to have a boss that's that invested is
Hmm.
incredible because it's very rare to find. How did you go about finding this job?
So it's funny. Basically, to go back to the job hunt, originally I had someone that I really, really wanted to work with, but it couldn't work out. There's a lot of complicating factors to when you can get a job or not. So I was kind of heartbroken. I was like, let me find another job. I have to do the whole hunt again. It was January of my D4 year. All my friends had just matched to residencies, and I was like, oh man, I feel kind of like, I just felt like a loser. I was like, I can't get the job that I wanted. Everyone matched. What do I do? So I did what everyone does. I went to Facebook. And I actually I found the group called Dental Practice Matchmaker. It's like it's a pretty big Facebook group. Do you know about it?
No, I had no idea.
Oh my gosh, Ellie, if you're ever looking, you gotta like I know that you just got
page now.
Yeah, no, go on it now, because it's like people looking, and they hashtag the state that they're looking for. It's people looking for associates, and associates looking for people. And I think the biggest thing is you have to be, people don't want to rock the boat, right? So people post on there anonymous. People try to flex and be like, I'm a new grad, I could produce this much per hour, I know this and this, right? My approach was totally opposite. I went on there knowing I have a lot to learn. I'm a new grad. I gotta find my place here. So instead, I posted pictures of me and my dog. And I talked about, how I went to pharmacy school before. I have my podcast. I'm passionate about marketing. And my podcast is about like self-help and humor, pop culture, small talk for, young women in healthcare. And by doing that, kind of what I alluded to earlier, you weed out the people that are not right for you. And instead, it attracted this wealth of people that they were on the same page. They love the humor, they love the lifestyle, they'll support me, and they'll want to help me find balance. It wasn't people production hungry, number hungry, like all of that matters, right? My boss and I talk about how production and numbers, it helps us set goals, it gives us direction. But that can't be the only thing. I can't just be an anonymous, no picture, not talking about myself, just talking about numbers, because I'm not going to attract the people that support that. So long story short, he commented on it, and then I had some other people comment being like, you got to talk to this guy, he's the best. And I was like, okay. And then I met him, and I was like, he is the best. So long story short, that's how I ended up here.
Oh, I love that. Well, congratulations. Like, it's you talking about him and like crediting the team, it just goes, it's a compliment to the team itself, because like clearly you guys are very collaborative, you're very like value driven, and I think that's what dentistry should be, and that's the only way that you can actually grow as a dentist, but also as a practice. Yeah, so kudos to you, kudos to them. Like,
and I must say too, though. Yeah, no, please do. It's called Dental Practice Matchmaker. I think anyone that's ever looking for a job, whether it's to own, associate, whatever, like you got to get on there. And I must say too, though, I adore my team. We have a great bond. Like, it's like it's the best, right? I didn't know, when I said earlier I didn't realize how good being a dentist could be. I credit that to the team. Like, I didn't realize how much I could love my team. On the flip side, I have everything on paper perfect, right? I love being a dentist. I have my one column, I'm happy 4 days a week, blah blah blah. I still have a hard time, and that's just to tell anyone out there listening, you could have the perfect job, you could be best friends with your coworkers, you could love everything you're doing, have one column, live that cushy life, but at the end of the day, dentistry is still ridiculously hard. So I don't want to come on here and make it sound like I have everything perfect, because like I literally just cried today about how I'm stressed about what's to come. I cried to my fiance before popping onto this, and like that's just the reality of it, is even if everything on paper is perfect, it's a hard job, and that's the truth.
It's hard, and I'm here for you. Like, if you ever want to talk, like I get it.
Thank you.
I have had my days where I've teared up and cried and had like, I pulled away from everyone because of it.
Yeah, that drive home is like sad.
Yeah, it's so hard. But tell me, so what is that thing that like shocked you about dentistry, or surprised you, or has been the biggest trigger for you?
I think the biggest trigger for me is when I can't deliver on something repeatedly, because I didn't know that could happen. In school, it's kind of like when problems happen, someone helps you, and you, for the most part, like with their expertise, you're able to just solve it. Like, you don't have to redo things. But now, I always joke on Game of Thrones. I don't know if you watched Game of Thrones.
I've watched a few episodes.
It's okay. You don't have to know it, but one of the characters on the show, Arya, she has this running list in her head of like names of people that she wants. Like this is not totally related, but she has a list of names of people she wants revenge on. My version is I have a list of names that I feel bad about. Like their cases haunt me because something either went wrong with it or I couldn't deliver in the way that I wanted. Like at bed at nighttime, I'm like this person. Like I can't say their names.
Crazy how you remember these names and they
It's
stay
wild.
with you?
Like this is not their name, but I'm like Becky Smith, Donald Smith. Like I'm just like I feel so bad, and like maybe it's the people pleaser in me, but I just didn't realize until becoming in the new world how many things can go wrong with your crowns, with the scans, with the impressions, with the prep. And luckily, I mean, it's not like a long list. I talked to my boss about this today. He's like, don't worry, that list will get longer. We'll get you there, because the longer you do it, like the longer the list, that means the more experience you have.
Yeah.
But that was a surprise to me, was how you won't always be the hero. Oh,
Right.
and also how hard it is to tell someone that they have a cavity. I didn't realize that was hard, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt this way, Ellie, but I feel guilty sometimes being like, you have a cavity, you need to fix it. Like, why is that hard?
Every day. So
Yeah,
hard.
why?
This person didn't have pain. They don't know what's been happening.
Exactly.
They haven't been to the dentist for a couple of years. And it might be like a one surface cavity. It might be like a mild, like, or moderate cavity, but like it's there. It exists.
Yeah,
It's just,
like,
how do
why?
you prove it to them? So like actually in an episode with Dr. Stephen Liu, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, of course, I love him.
Steven.
Yeah, I love
Great
Dentistry
guy.
with Steven.
Great
Love
guy.
that guy.
He shout out to Steven.
He's like my big brother here.
Yeah, same. He's so we were talking about what do you do, and he's like, I use an intraoral camera to take photos and show them what's actually happening, because once they see it and they see like, oh, this tooth doesn't actually look good, like,
yeah,
oh, that spot
that's a
doesn't
good
look
point.
clean, right? Then they'll be more like they'll opt into doing the filling, or they'll have a better understanding of why they're getting the filling, right?
That's actually a good point, because sometimes even if the tooth is like stained and we know that's not caries, that could be enough for them to be like, oh, that's really like dark looking.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I should try that.
No, definitely try that. I don't have an intraoral camera at work, but we were talking about different ways you can do it. And I'm sure there's ways like you can buy off of Amazon and set up, but that's like if you want to go down that route.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'll keep that in mind for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that you're, you have this mentorship, you have somebody who supports you emotionally and professionally, where do you see yourself in the next 6 months?
Next 6 months. So what really excites me is I'm really starting to hit that phase where like I've gotten a lot faster after school, and I've gotten a lot more confident in certain things like treatment planning. I've gotten a lot better, because comprehensive treatment planning was hard at first.
Yeah, no, it's still hard.
Yeah, no, it's still hard, but I think that was also a shock, was like, oh, I am like deficient in this, and school doesn't really always set you up for that. Where I see going the next 6 months, I'm just really excited to build on that, because it's now kind of like my speed is getting better and I'm being more confident, but now let's see how we can take that. Like, let's see, like, for example, in the very beginning too, I would schedule things a certain way where it would be like one filling, right? I'm excited to see like, okay, now we're going to approach quadrant dentistry. And I think the biggest thing I'm most excited for the next 6 months is working in dentistry almost feels like you're working in sales or communications, right? And so what I'm excited for is to see like how much better of a communicator can I be? We track these things, like we have like the intelligence system. We use that to track by like patient case treatment acceptance. So like I have percentages in mind kind of every month that I'm trying to use as a ballpark for like how can I be more clear and more approachable in how I explain why you need what you need. And my boss broke it down yesterday. He's like, there's dentistry is simple. There's 3 things you need to work on. Am I seeing what needs to be done? Can I train my eyes to see the radiograph, see the tooth, treatment plan, what needs to be done? 2, do I have the confidence and the bravery to present what the patient needs done to them? Am I having the right conversations? Am I telling them they need a crown when they need a crown? Or I'm telling them, oh, I'll be the hero, I'll try to save it with the filling when it needs a crown or whatever, or with whatever. 3rd thing being, does the patient say yes? Do they understand? Do they trust you to be the one to help them? And so I'm kind of excited to see like how I'll grow in those 3 realms, and just like become a better communicator. And that kind of works with the other part of it is I have my podcast called Just a Quick Pinch. We basically, it's a podcast kind of about communicating because we talk to, it's for young women in healthcare. We go into self-help. We go into all the mental health, emotional aspects of it. I have a nervous system coach that's on as a guest, and we do twice a week. Tuesdays are our main episodes, but Fridays are chief complaints. There where our listeners submit like their problems and their questions, and I have Masha, our nervous system coach, help us with answering those. And so what I'm excited for in the next 6 months is to just see more growth with that, because we're at a really exciting time where the podcast is growing. We started talking about pop culture small talk stories for you to share at work. Ellie was a guest, so you guys will have to listen to my episode with Ellie. But like I was saying, dentistry is all about communication. So very clearly, so is podcasting. And what I love is I feel like my day job of being a dentist helps me become a better podcast host and vice versa.
Oh, that totally resonates with me. I see a difference in the way I communicate with people.
Yeah,
also,
right?
Not just patients, but also like colleagues. And it definitely has helped. And it's fun. Like you said, dentistry helps you communicate, and like it helps podcasting. Podcasting is helping you be a better dentist. So
yeah,
it's a full circle. It's like a feedback loop.
Totally.
With your mentor right now, what would you say is the best advice you've ever heard from him?
Oh my gosh, I could write a book. I'm like, don't tell him that he's gonna get a big head. No, I'm just kidding. I like love our relationship because he really is like a big brother to me. I feel like the best thing he's ever taught me is, we talked about this earlier about how I'm trying to remember, and now I'm trying to remember what he said. We talked about this earlier because I explained to him, I feel sometimes like a salesman. I didn't want to feel like a business person going to healthcare. Right. People act like healthcare is this glorious thing, but the world is capitalist. Like, we need to make money from what we do, right? And the gist of what he gave me for advice was, sometimes like it's in the patient's best interest for you to be persuasive. If you believe in the work you're giving, like if you believe that crown is what's best from them, you're going to save them a world of pain, infection, hurt, whatever. It's in their best interest for you to be the best salesperson that you can be, right? It's not about sales, money, all of that, but you have to be the master communicator. And so that kind of took the pressure off me to feel like, oh, I'm being a salesperson, like blah, 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 because it's in their best interest. If I truly believe like that tooth is better off with the crown, then I'm doing the patient a service by being as persuasive as I can be and explaining, educating them on everything.
That's a great perspective. I never really thought about it that way, but you're totally
because when
right.
You hear the word when you hear the word persuasion, you think like, oh, snaky, like lying, deceit. But I think we need to give persuasion better PR, because like, no, persuasion can also mean like you are afraid to get a root canal because you've heard everyone say it hurts and it's bad for you. Persuasion can be educating the patient, actually, root canal should be pain-free and it's gone a long way and your tooth will be better off, with a root canal, whatever.
I totally agree, Connie. Totally. So tell me now, like, is there, now that you're 6 months in, you have all this advice and all this support, is there something that you want new dentists to know? Like, is there something that you want them to hear that was surprising to you or important to you, or realization to you?
I think the biggest realization is this field is really, really hard, right? And there are many ways to go about this. You can be someone that like, you can find major success. There's a lot of successful dentists out there. They're riding off into the sunset with their businesses. They've made it, right? There's also dentists that really resent their job. They're very burnt out. It's fair. I see now how the quote unquote villains are created. I see it. I get it. I empathize. The biggest thing I learned, actually, now that I'm really thinking about it, is how much I respect dentists, because I didn't realize how hard this field actually is. So now I'm like, I've only been working 6 months and I've, experienced all this stuff. I'm like, how did you guys do this for years and years and pick yourself back up every time? The thing I want you new dentists to know out there, though, is it's really up to you what kind of a dentist you're going to be. Do you want to ride off into the sunset? Do you want to be resentful? Like, no one wants to be resentful, right? But like, you have to be actively aware. Like, that's going to be your path if you make certain choices. So make the choices. Well, first, have a plan what kind of dentist you want to be. Do you want to love your life? Do you want to own a practice? Do you want to have enough time to spend with your family and friends? Do you want to be an associate the whole time? Like, no answer is wrong. but don't be mad at the world. Don't be mad at the field if you didn't have a clear vision of where you want to go, and then all of a sudden you don't know where you're going, right? So get clear on that. There's a lot of things that are not our problem, not our fault. I'm with you guys on that. There's a lot. There's cranky patients, insurance sucks, dentistry is hard arts and crafts, and everything is there's risk benefit. I get it. There's a lot out of our control. But don't be mad at the world if the one thing you can control, which is your goals and your vision, don't be mad at the world if you weren't clear on that, because that is your job. I heard a quote once where it's like, I think it was something like happiness, like what happens to you might not be in your control, but your happiness. Oh shoot, I'm totally butchering that quote. I don't remember the quote. Yeah, well, I'm like a very quotesy person. Fun fact about me, right? You can't control. We all know this. You can't control those shitty patients that are. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to swear on this one?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I encourage it.
Yeah, that's right. Right? You can't control the shitty patients that are going to be shitty no matter what. You cannot control the insurance companies that are going to take all that stuff. Yeah. You can't control a lot, right? But even though your happiness, a lot of aspects you can't control, it should be your own priority. So a lot of times we feel like giving up because, like, you know, it's not working out the way we want. And that's okay. I've been there. I've been on rock bottom. I'm only 6 months in. I have so much more rock bottom to go. I'm only in the part of the ride that just started to go down, right? So I get that. But the thing is, you get to decide where that ride turns up. You get to decide like how you pursue your life paths, the goals you want to chase, what kind of a life you create. So let that like be fuel to inspire you and excite you. Spend your energy like chasing what you want rather than running away from like what you're scared of. And I think a lot of us end up in this reactive scared mode, running away. So I guess my biggest advice to new grads is figure out what kind of life you want and adjust accordingly, make the right choices and stand up for those choices, because maybe I'm naive and the world is still my oyster. You know, I'm only 28, but I still believe that the world is your oyster. So yeah.
I love the positivity that you have. You have a very positive outlook on life, and it's beautiful. And
thank you.
It's not naive. It's actually a blessing and a treat, and you should stay that way as long as you can.
Thank you. I'm trying, but the real world's making it hard.
No, listen, being positive is an active effort. Like, it's total mindset shift, and it requires daily practice. Like, because you said this ride, it's up and down, right? And life is up and down. And so you're going to go through these cycles where you're really high, and then you're going to be really low. But in order to make it through, you got to stay consistent, like consistently happy and consistently positive. I mean, not every day, granted, is going to be the best day of your life, but there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah, I think setting that expectation that, you know what, my goal for today is not to be like perfectly happy the whole time. I think a lot of our society actually places a lot of emphasis, I even just did just now, on happiness. It's not normal to feel happy all the time, just like it's not normal to, you know, feel any emotion the whole time. So instead of like chasing that happiness, another good piece of advice I always give people is like, don't chase what makes you happy. Like, chase the passion, chase the vision, because in doing that, you're going to set yourself up for times of being unhappy and in pain. But that's a fight that's much more meaningful than just trying to stay happy all the time. You're not going to win that one.
Do you have a vision board by any chance?
I love vision boarding. I do. But it's funny that you asked me that. Did you make one?
I did make one this year. It was my first ever.
Oh, really? Did you like that experience?
Oh, it was so much fun, and it was a really nice activity, and I did it over a couple days. It was in like just in one evening or one sitting. But now I made the vision board and I put it on my desktop. So now every time I open up my laptop, I see it.
I love that. See, okay, every year, I'm a big vision board manifestation girly. If you can't tell, I'm a little woo-woo like that. But every year, I used to make a vision board that was like CEO 1 million, boss babe, blah, 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 you know, doing the most. This was the first year. Guess what's on my vision board? It's kind of embarrassing. Clean laundry, a clean kitchen, early bedtime, reading my Kindle, having my nails done, and having a cute sweat set. Like, this was the first year, Ellie. I don't know what changed in me. I want that soft girl life. I want to enjoy my life with my fiance, and I want to have clean, like, not just be living in a rat's nest. Like, I feel like to get this far in school, sure, I had to sacrifice self-care, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's times where you got to grind, but there's also times where you got to take care of yourself, and I wasn't the best at that. So I realized this year, I got to be just as intentional about taking care of myself, that self-care, that laundry, that clean kitchen, as I am about my goals with podcast, dentistry, all that.
I think it's totally reasonable and it's not silly at all. I actually
Yeah.
applaud you for doing that because, to be honest, like all those little things create a safe space. Like if you are
Mm,
comfortable in your home and you feel like you can decompress and unwind, then you can fully recharge, right?
yeah.
So allowing yourself or creating an environment that allows you to do that, that also like is intentionality, right? So good for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. And also,
Yeah.
I must say, we've recorded today like for hours now. So your living room is gorgeous, by the way.
Oh, you like
Yeah, I
it?
love
I
like the
thought
couch.
I mean, all the lights are off because I don't know. I was doing the whole light setup thing, but that'll
Yeah. No,
shift.
it looked fire.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm happy you like. I moved into this apartment recently, so I'm still like
Hmm.
adjusting. Um.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. But thank you. So before we sign off, is
Mhm.
there? So we know about your podcast. Share us the link to your podcast and also your Instagram handle so people can connect with you and listen to your content. Um, Tell us what those are.
Yeah. So my first page is Dr. Connie Wang. That's where I share, my daily life as a new grad. Most of the content I post, I try to post like once a day, about a pop culture small talk news story, something for you to share at work, right? Like I want you when you stumble on this page to find that news story. For example, one of the ones I shared, Snoop Dogg is hosting the Olympics. I don't know if you saw that.
Really?
Yeah, he's gonna be a commentator in like the Olympic Village. He's gonna be like interviewing the people. It's gonna be great. So that's
That
what
is
you can expect.
that's entertaining. Definitely entertaining.
Yeah, so on that page I post one pop culture small talk story a day usually. Then on my Instagram page for my podcast, Just a Quick Pinch, that's where I share snippets of my convos with guests. On the podcast, our first we like I said, we post Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays are our main episode. The guests, we talk about self-help, we talk about mental health. Like Ellie, I had her on, you got to listen to that one. She gave us so many, I mean, you guys know, you listen to the podcast, she gave us so much good advice. We talk about the pop culture stories, and on
We talk a
Friday,
lot.
we did, it was fun. And then on Fridays we do chief complaints, either with my fiance or our nervous system coach. We answer your burning questions. It's almost like case studies. You guys are like, at work, this person's bothering me, what do I do?
Oh, I love
And
that.
thank you. Yeah. And then you can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called Just a Quick Pinch.
Connie, thank you so much for the conversation. Today's been like a fun podcasting day and super easy and
Yeah.
super relatable. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy the content that we both created today. So thank you for being on.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me on. It was so fun being